I don't know what happened to the previous video's ending. Some technical difficulties occurred, but I'm back just to give you a final recap on the origin of box press cigars. Patents were introduced from 1866 to 1874. Another patent that I believe was approved in 1917. But by then, box press cigars had already been in full production from Cuba. My theory is that in 1859, Cuba started to box press cigars, and maybe even slightly before 1859, when they got a hold of something that they could really use to box press their cigars. The trunk press was introduced. And I think that Cuba probably did it to have their cigars stand out. I think it was an aesthetical reason for it. I think Cuba wanted to do something different. I think they wanted to show their customers that, hey, this is a Cuban cigar. It's box press. This is a Cuban cigar. The fact that when I read a certain part of that description from William Gill, where consumers could not tell the difference between a fake or a real Havana cigar, tells me that other manufacturers started to copy the practice, started to use the box press machine, the trunk press, in order to replicate that Cuban look. Now, here's another thing that isn't in anything that I just read, but that you may probably find in my review for the Padron 2000, which I did earlier in the summer. I was talking about the history of Jose Padron and how when he first left Cuba and came to Miami, the cigars that he made, he was basically trying to copy the style of what he had back home. They were box pressed. And he continued to box press them. But not all of Jose Padron's cigars are box pressed, right? But when he talks about the cigars that he remembers from home, he talks about them being box pressed. So, okay, we've established that Cuba had box pressing down pat just about before anybody else. But everybody else knew what Cuba was doing, and they wanted in on it. They wanted to box press their cigars and attract the consumer to their cigars. So I think that as time went by, everyone started getting in on the action, and the specialty, the novelty of it wore off in the later years. And then the fad sort of, well, it passed, right? Because if you look at Cuba now, there are so many cigars that are just not box pressed. But this is after Castro, not before Castro. I did a little extra research and I went on some pictures of vintage Cuban cigars from the 40s and the 50s. And I found a lot of pictures of H. Upmans that were box pressed, up for auction, and they were box pressed. So perhaps things changed when Castro took over. Perhaps he wasn't as fond of the box press, or perhaps he wanted to put his own mark on the cigar industry within his own country. And obviously he had his preferences for the panetela and a longer, thinner cigar, round cigar. That could have changed the trend, the style of cigars in Cuba for sure. When your leader doesn't really like the old-fashioned box press, when your leader decides that, hey, I'm gonna take the advice of my confidant, Secretary Celia Sanchez, and I'm gonna have women trained to be rollers, and I'm going to do things differently from top to bottom, it's going to shake things up. But it's also going to send ripples throughout the rest of the industry worldwide. And at some point, box pressing was no longer in fashion. And then fast forward to present times where we have little gems like this and others that produce a wonderful smoke, a fabulous smoke. And so there you have it. That's the best that I could do. And I hope it was informative enough. I thank you for watching and tolerating my technical difficulties and having to do a 2-part series on this unintentionally. But I thank you nonetheless for watching Backyard Cigars Box Press, the origins of the box press cigar. Thank you.